Welcome back. The North Dakota women's basketball team picked up an 82-54 home victory last night over the NAIA's Mayville State. The win was the 6th for the Fighting Hawks in their last 7 games. And for more on UND's strong start to the season, here's Alex Heinert with head coach Travis Brewster.
Thanks, Kelly. Yes, excited to be talking hoops again with UND women's basketball coach Travis Brewster. Year 6 of the Brew era as the head coach of UND. So far, so good this season. A strong start to the 2017-18 season.
Yeah, it's been a pleasant surprise. You know, they grasped some concepts pretty quick, and you know, it's a challenging schedule, and they adapted pretty well. So they've got to keep rolling.
Yeah, you mentioned that challenging schedule. That was kind of the big talking point coming into the non-conference season. Big trips to Corvallis and to Waco, and then taking on South Dakota State and Brookings. Obviously, didn't come out with any victories in those 3 games. So what do you think your team learned from those experiences against top teams?
Well, the biggest thing playing obviously the Power 5 schools, we learned that, you know, you have to execute a certain way at all times to give yourself the best chance possible. You know, you learned that playing at Baylor too. You know, they're probably truthful. They're going to be in the Final Four. I mean, there's no other way I can put it. Then obviously go down to South Dakota State and didn't play particularly well. We just didn't, and you got to be ready to go, you know, and you got to be able to battle and get through some things. But you know, it's all a learning experience with this group. They're fairly young.
Yeah, those 3 losses, the only 3 that you've experienced so far in 9 games this season. A couple home wins over UMass and UNI, a tournament team from last year. An emotional win over NDSU last weekend. Through those 6 games, 6 victories so far this year, you got to feel good about how your team has grown from some of the early setbacks.
Oh yeah, I mean, you look at those games, right, and they're quality opponents, and be able to get out there and execute is great, you know. And we're pretty lucky with their home fans too. You know, they helped us out tremendously in those games as well. So it's been fun. It really has been.
Yeah, that North Dakota State game this past weekend, always a fun rivalry game between those 2 schools, future conference rivals, of course. Your 2 North Dakotans really stepped up and led you 2 of 5 on your program with Lexi and Fallon both going off. I think 49 of the team, 79 points and 22 combined rebounds. Those 2 have been playing fantastic this season.
Well, you know, you look at those 2 and how they play, right? And they understand the significance of the game. They understand what it takes, but they're also starting to take on that role of leadership on the floor. You know, and I think they really exuded very well of, hey, this is an important game for us, or where we need to go in the season. So you got to compliment the 2 of them, how they've been playing. You know, with that comes a lot of responsibility, though, because now people are starting packing in a little bit, trying to take them out of the game. That's where we need our other players like Jill Morton, Bailey Strand to step up and do some things. So we're excited.
Yeah, you mentioned Jill and Bailey, 2 of a big 9-person junior class for this team this year, just like Lexi and Fallon. How have you seen some of those kids start to take on that leadership role now this season in their 3rd year in the program?
Well, the biggest thing you can tell about is how they go about their daily business and practice. Jill's taking on more of a scoring role, obviously, but she also works very hard on the defensive side. Bailey's taking on more of that coach on the floor type of role, you know, and that's nice. And Fallon and Lexi have always been that way. The 2 of them have really been communicative on the floor, but you start mending them all together like that, and it gets to be pretty special. So really excited about them.
You picked up a comfortable 28-point win last night against Mayville State. You get SMSU coming up this next week before a big trip to South Dakota. 2 obviously, you know, lower division opponents. What do you want to see your team perform? How do you want to see the game shape up against teams like that?
Well, the biggest thing is consistency, right? You want to see us execute our game plans. You want to see competitive nature while you're out there on the floor. The other part about it is you know, there's a certain standard that we're trying to adhere to for our program, and you want to see the team push for that standard night in and night out, no matter who we play.
Yeah, well, we've seen that continue over the course of your 6 years here. We've seen it over the course of 9 games so far this season. A couple left in the non-conference, and then conference play, incredibly, just around the corner. It feels like that's going to be here before we know it, bro.
Yeah, that's it's incredible, huh? I mean, you hit it right on the head. I mean, it's right there. You look at the beginning of the year, and you're like, oh, when's that going to happen? And now I'm sitting there going, okay, we need a couple more days. We need a couple more days here. But really excited about that. Obviously, it's our last season in the Big Sky, and then obviously we transition over to the Summit. So there's going to be some difficulties, obviously, along the way, and that's our opposing opponents, right? Because they're not going to make it easy for us. And you know, it's a great thing for our players to be able to have that opportunity.
Yeah, well, congrats again on the success so far this season. Good luck against the Mustangs coming up on Monday. We'll chat about it next week.
You bet. Thanks.
Travis Brewster. Kelly, back to you.
All right, awesome. Thanks so much, Alex. Well, staying at UND, we had big college football news coming out of Grand Forks earlier today as North Dakota announced they've inked a deal to play 2 future games at Nebraska in 2022 and in 2026. When the Fighting Hawks take the field in Lincoln 5 years from now, it'll mark the first time they'll play a Big Ten school in the Division I era, and that's a big deal for Bubba Schweigert and this program.
Well, it's just awesome news to play a program in the region, a program with such a rich football tradition. You know, many of us have grown up watching the Huskers and so many big games throughout the history of their program. And for our fan base to be able to drive down and experience that stadium and that type of support for that program, it's down the road a bit, but you know, it'll be here before we know it. And it's just going to be such an awesome experience for our team and our fans.
It's an iconic program in college football, and I know for our players, they'll really look forward to having that opportunity. We'll have 2 games up there. For our fans, what's great about it is it's drivable. And one of the things that we've tried to do, and Coach Schweigert's been trying to urge that too. It's hard to get those kinds of games, but when we do, if you can get them closer where fans can go, we'd really like to do that. So we're excited to get the Big Red and get up there and get to Lincoln and enjoy the atmosphere and maybe shock the world.
The Cornhuskers join a group of future FBS opponents for UND that also include Washington in 2018, Kansas State in 2020, and Iowa State in 2024. Well, keeping it in the Dakotas, Nebraska football also announced today that they've scheduled 3 games with South Dakota State for 2020, 2024, and 2028. The Jacks are no strangers to playing the Big Red as they lost by just 14 in Lincoln in 2010 before falling 59-20 in their most recent meeting in 2013. Well, coming up next on Midco Sports tonight, we catch up with SDSU women's basketball head coach Aaron Johnston as he tells us about his team that's off to an 8-2 start with some impressive games to boot. We'll be right back.
Midco Sports Tonight, presented by Avera Orthopedics.